Jude, we're at verse 7. Jude, verse 7. We briefly touched on this, but we'll go in deep tonight. Jude, verse 7. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Okay, they did two things in this passage. They gave themselves over to fornication, and they went after strange flesh. So the first thing is the natural thing to humanity. It's illicit sex. Sex outside of the boundaries that God set for it. So he says right here, that's where they started, but it didn't stop there. Sin never stops. It keeps getting worse and worse. Well, once the devil saw they're willing to step outside of God's boundary there, he said, I'll give you a new boundary. And then we've got strange flesh. Now, that could be one of two things. That's either the homosexual thing or, sodomy, like the name of the city. No doubt that was going on. However, it could also mean that mixing like we saw in Genesis 6 with angelic things that are non-human, take on strange flesh. Devils have the ability to transform themselves into men by doing that. We saw that. Look at Isaiah 14. Isaiah 14. Now, when they make that transition, there's your first tranny. When they make that transition from supernatural to the natural world, they get trapped there. God won't let them come back. Isaiah 14, verse 12. This, of course, is talking about Lucifer's transition from Lucifer to Satan or the devil. He says, How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will, all that I will, him boasting. He says, verse 15, Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, and say, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms? Okay, he's going to get trapped just like Genesis chapter 6. He's going to come to the earth in the tribulation to rule and reign on the earth as a man. And when he does, when they transition into human flesh, they're trapped. And that's how he dies. Look at Ezekiel 28. Ezekiel 28, verse 2. Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus, Thus saith the Lord God, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am a God. I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas, yet thou art a man and not God. And though thou set thine heart as the heart of God. So that's what happens. We saw it happen in Genesis chapter 6, but here it is. He's showing it to you. People, I don't know that I've ever heard anybody tell you about this side of it. But I think that's where we know that's what happened in Genesis 6. Well, we know that the Lucifer, Satan, the Antichrist, and the devil run this earth in the tribulation. And they run it from a human standpoint. They don't come down as an angel of light that is not seen to the human eye. They cloak themselves in human garb. And when they do that, God traps them. And that's why they die like a man. They get cast into hell where a man goes. And then they get recast into the lake of fire where he cast man. And he said that wasn't created for a man. So once they're in the man's body, they get the same torment that a human would, even though hell was created for the devil and his angels, an angelic thing. Daniel chapter 2. Daniel 2, verse 43. Daniel 2:43. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay. Okay, this is the image, and he's gone through and he's explained the different, from the head to the feet. what it means and how the different materials are and what their interpretations are. He's gotten down here and he says, you saw iron mixed with clay, miry clay. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. So the iron is obviously something angelic. And miry clay, you know what that's human. That's where we came from, dirt. Mud. Your name's Mud. Okay, so they're going to mix. Fact of the matter is they won't cleave one to the other. And here's why. We saw there that when Genesis 6 occurred, the offspring was a giant, but the offspring was not an angel. It was still human. Why? Because they didn't cleave one to the other. The spirit angelic thing that he had in heaven didn't pass on in the human form. No, the only thing he was able to do was reproduce a human, not an angel. Now, the human had some super abilities, height and strength and things like that, but not probably not any more than if God decided to make an extra large man. John chapter 6. John 6, verse 70. I'll give you a good one to work on and blow your mind with. John 6, verse 70. Jesus answered them, have not I chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil? So was he human or was he a devil? John 6, verse 70. Jesus answered them, have not I chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil? Not like, but is. The actual thing. Now, verse... Is that a question mark at the end of it? There is a question mark. Verse 71 clears up the question. He spake of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, for it was for he it was that should betray him, being one of the 12. So obviously he's talking about Judas, and he's saying he's a devil. Another place he says the devil from the beginning. I don't go too far with it, but you can if you want to. I see that at least 3 times Satan entered him. And so I think just like the serpent in the garden, I think that was originally a real serpent. And the devil entered that serpent. And so it could use the body. And I think that's what happened with him. Now, he, of course, gave himself over to that. It wasn't against his will. God doesn't enter a man against his will, and neither does the devil. Now, once you open the door to the devil, you give him permission. Now, you may not be able to kick him out once you've given him permission. God can. But once you give him permission, now, just like man, in this age, not in other ages, but in this age, you can't kick Jesus Christ out of you. Some of these people get tied up with getting possessed, and they don't have the strength to get rid of it, even though the desire may be there. So there's that Judas Iscariot. We know he comes back as the Antichrist, or he comes up from the pit as the Antichrist.
Yeah, the whole thing about whether he is the devil or whatever, I mean, right away when it said son of Simon, that showed the human part. But then the confusing part is where it also refers to him being son of perdition.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jesus Christ, the son of David? No, he's not. Jesus Christ, the son of God? How can you prove that? Son can mean several things. It can mean you follow the attributes of, or it could be a long distance lineage, or it could be an actual son. Good stuff to work on. I'm not saying you'll ever find the answer.
Like in all the kings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He would say, and David was your father, but he was begot by the guy before him.
Right.
Because he did all the things that David did, that was his father. When the ones that did right, it was always the son of David.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're always talking about Father Abraham.
Right, right. Yeah, in 2 Corinthians 11. 2 Corinthians 11, verse 13. Second Corinthians 11:13. He says, "For such are false apostles." You find people claiming that they're an apostle. Take them to this passage and say, the Bible warns us about false apostles. How do I know if you are a real apostle or a false apostle? Do you know there are some false ones? Name me some false apostles. Since you're the real one, you know the fake ones. Tell me about the fake ones. Okay? The Bible says this, there's false apostles. They're deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. It says right there, a false apostle shows up saying he's an apostle of Christ. He doesn't show up saying I'm an apostle of the devil. He shows up with a supposedly good message that a Christian would fall for. So how do I know you're the real deal? Verse 14. "And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light." Whew. So there's that mixing. Now, this supernatural world we don't know a whole lot about. We do know what the Bible tells us about it. And Hollywood and the movies and all that stuff want to do what the Bible tells us goes on in the supernatural. That shape shifting and transforming from one form to another. He says that's what the devil does. Now there's some people who take the stance that Satan had a literal child. And you can take that or not take that. I don't know that I go that far. It's just, I can see where they get it from. I just don't know that I go that far. Genesis 3:15. Genesis 3:15. He says, "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman." This is when God's handing out punishment for the sin. He's gotten down to the serpent at this point. He says, "I'm going to put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed." Well, what's her seed? Okay, you can say that. And so what's his seed?
Judas.
What is it in this passage?
Cain.
Well, if you take it absolute literal as being fulfilled right there on the spot, it would have to be. But you got more problems than that. A woman doesn't have a seed. "It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel." Now, here's why I don't take it that way, is because the finish of the verse. The finish of the verse says this is when this thing transpires, is the bruising of the head and the heel. That didn't have anything to do with Cain. And that has to do with Jesus Christ and the devil, and it's not going to happen until Armageddon. People will tell you that happened at the cross. It didn't happen at the cross. It's going to happen at Armageddon. Luke chapter 3. Luke 3 verse 7. "Then said he to the multitude that came forth to be baptized of him." What a sweet man. "O generation of vipers." Okay, if the serpent had a seed, what would it produce? Vipers. "Who hath warned thee to flee from wrath to come?" From the wrath to come. Whew. Now, I'm not telling you that those people that walked up were literal vipers. But John knew his Bible. So he's connecting them all the way back there to what's going on. And had the Jews accepted Christ, that all would have been fulfilled within a matter of years with Armageddon coming in. And that would have been perfect fulfillment. John chapter 8. John 8:44. John 8:44, Jesus speaking, "Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there's no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it." Okay, so there's the devil. Jesus is saying somebody here is a child of the devil. Now, we take it spiritually, and you can take it spiritually. Spiritually, you choose who's going to adopt you. When your conscience is quickened so that you know that there's something that's a sin against God versus righteousness, and you choose to sin, which all men do. There's never been a human other than Jesus Christ who's come up to the choice of sin or righteousness and always chosen righteousness. At some point they choose wickedness. They become adopted by the devil. Now man has the same choice. God says, I'll pull you out of that family, but you got to choose me. And you got to choose all of me. It's not just get some fire insurance. Look at John chapter 17. John 17:12. Jesus speaking here, he's praying. He says, "While I was with them in the world, I kept them in thy name. Those that thou gavest me, I have kept, and none of them is lost." Would they fall out of his pocket or something? None of them is lost. What does he mean by he's kept them? Well, he means that he's kept them from the wicked one. He's kept them in a transition sense of Old Testament salvation, and they're not lost. But one is the son of perdition, that the scriptures might be fulfilled. That one is lost. Okay, and then that explains what the not losing any, and some of them that are lost, or one of them that is lost. The animal kingdom, I say, has the ability to be used of these demonic forces. We saw in the garden, the very first example of it, the serpent being used by the devil. He entered that serpent and worked through it. Yes?
I've always wondered why you didn't question the fact that the snake was talking to you.
Well, there's probably a lot of, well, I'll tell you my viewpoint on it. You come up with your own.
I just wondered.
I think that all of those things could communicate. They had a pure language. And so he was communicating with all of those. He was supposed to keep the garden. Okay, and he's supposed to keep track of all those animals and name all the animals. So I think there was open communication between all of it. And I don't think it was unusual for an animal to speak, or she would have been shocked. I think that was a normal thing. I know that's wild and way out there, and I couldn't really prove it if you nailed me down to it, but you come up with your own plan for it. Now, he says something there. He says, you'll be as the gods, as though there's gods around that she's aware of. And she didn't question him on that. So she thinks there's some higher being around that's speaking. So she was probably aware of a lot more than we are.
No, I was looking at the wording. It's as gods, but
Be as gods, plural. Not the God, singular.
Didn't God walk in the garden with them in the evening? So she knew the God.
Mm-hmm. But is it capital or lowercase?
it was lowercase.
Lowercase.
And it was
Gods,
plural.
plural.
When Samuel came up, didn't the woman at Endor say, I see God's
Ascending and descending. Mm-hmm.
And then Jacob at the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
So he's seen,
Yep.
and they would be like powerful entities.
Yeah.
To,
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Now, those cases are something they're seeing into the spirit realm. When Eve was around, it was before the curse, and there was no separation. I don't think there was any separation in the physical, what we call natural world, and the supernatural. Because God would come down, that's supernatural, and walk in the garden, that's supernatural. You could eat a fruit, and he'd give you sin, that's supernatural and natural.
he's definitely in the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven belonging to
Yep,
God.
at the same time. 2 Kings 23, verse 13. Second Kings 23:13. Now, of course, if the devil succeeded once, he's going to try to repeat it. With Eve, he had success. 2 Kings 23:13. And the high places that were before Jerusalem, which were on the right hand of Mount of Corruption. Okay, you know right where we are. America. Which Solomon, the king of Israel, had built for Ashtaroth. Ooh. The abomination of the Zidonians, and Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, and Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon, did the king defile. Solomon wasn't any good. He included all of that pagan, we call it mythology. Well, you take what we call mythology and you run it back 2,000 years, and they didn't believe it was mythology, they thought it was real. Go back 4,000 years, Rome lived by it. I mean, to them that was religion. Go to India now. There are multiple gods, real similar to mythology. Well, that's where Solomon was worshiping all these fake deities. That's bad news. Started with those high places. Acts 14.
Coming from where he came, not being so humble and asking for wisdom, and then telling me that is like hard to fathom that he would get that far off course. But he said his wives turned his hearts.
Here's the problem. God always gives us choices. Solomon was given extra wisdom, more than normal. So you know what was given in addition to that? Extra opportunities. Doesn't mean that he's going to be wise and always make the right choice. It means he's got even more choices to choose wrong or right. He says there that he gave him wisdom and largeness of heart. You know what gets us in trouble most of the time?
Yeah.
Too much compassion for the wrong thing. There's where it went. Acts 14. Acts 14, verse 11. And when the people saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in the speech of Lycaonium, "The gods are come down to us in the likeness of men." Okay, it's been going on from the beginning. It's going to go on again. That's where your TV programs are pushing. Right now, I listen to some of these wild things that y'all won't ever listen to. You wouldn't give it enough time. They're crazy. To me, it's almost comical. But they're saying that there are good aliens.
Edwards and bad ones.
Yes, they're both. There's good aliens and bad ones. And the good ones are going to come to Earth and help us. Now, they really believe this.
It's like they said
Who is
there's
they?
good Muslims. And
A whole big group.
they say there's good Muslims. Most of the Muslims are good. It's just that small fanatical sect
Right.
that traps deity to their children.
Well, these are what would be gods coming down to us to help us. And they would view them as extraterrestrial beings that are coming to help, us poor, weak men that need it.
About witchcraft.
Yeah. And it's coming. But men have always craved it. And one day God's going to let them get what they've been asking for and coveting. Verse 12. And they called Barnabas Jupiter and Paul Mercurius, because he was the chief speaker. Okay, there's your mythology. It's gone right there. They got it. They said, we've been studying this, in fake history class, and now it's fulfilling itself. Acts 19. Acts 19:28. Could you really imagine this? Adults believing in this phony stuff. But they do. In fact, they believed in it so much that they were willing to fight and kill if somebody said something against their imagination of mythology. Here it is, Acts 19:28. And when they heard these sayings, they were full of wrath and cried out, saying, Great is Diana of the Ephesians. Don't be dissing my God. She's great. But could you imagine that? A whole town of people? And they're insane because they were chanting it. Something cuckoo going on.
Yeah, why can't she defend herself?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Look at Deuteronomy 22. Deuteronomy 22, verse 5. What's going on right now is going to get worse. I mean, that's a happy, uplifting message, isn't it? We see the transgender move. Okay, the next one is trans species, and they're already working on it. You'll find people that have had implants of fake horns on their head and fangs and all kinds of messed up stuff. They're physically mutilating themselves on purpose because they want to get into the animal kingdom. Cuckoo. Deuteronomy 22, verse 5. The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto the man, neither shall the man put on the woman's garment. For all that do so are abomination unto the Lord thy God. That sounds real simple, and we'd take some of that in exchange for some of this mess we're seeing now. But that's how it started. It started with, you think you're the only one that can do that? Well, I can do it too. Okay, and now we've seen it go almost full circle. They're back to, now you can't tell me I'm a human. I'll be an animal if I want to be an animal. Yeah, animals are humans too. Deuteronomy 23, look at verse 1. It says, He that is wounded in the stones, or hath his privy member cut off, shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord. God made two sexes on purpose. He doesn't want man manipulating it. Now, I know that you can't say anything about that nowadays, supposedly. Now, I'm not a doctor, so I can probably get away with it. But if I had the name doctor behind my name or in front of it or wherever they put it, I would be in big trouble for saying that. Because then I might have some influence. Somebody would think I knew something. And you can't. That's that mutilation going on right now. And they're making it so that kids can get the hormone treatments without any parent supervision or sign off on it. That's that mutilation. God said, no, I made you the way I want you. And man says, no, I'll be God. I'll decide what I am. And then they want to keep changing it. Whew, that's a mess.
Children younger and letting them do this. I mean, children that, the brain is not completely and totally developed. My doctor said you're like 24, 25, completely developed. When they're 5, 6, and 7 years old,
I know
they
it.
don't have any kind of a concept.
Or a brain. I know it.
They're just tiny children,
2 Kings 23. 2 Kings 23, verse 7. Now, this all sounds far-fetched, and most preachers wouldn't tell you any of this stuff, and that's fine. I'm not most. It's in the Bible. I'm going to give it to you. Now, the fact of the matter is it needs to be preached at church, because if you don't, it'll walk in the door. 2 Kings 23, verse 7. Somebody's cleaning up here. And he brake down the houses of the Sodomites that were by the house of the Lord. Whoa! Sodomites are moving in right by the house of the Lord? Yeah. Remember what the devil transformed himself into? An angel of light. And his ministers, his false apostles, were going to claim they were the apostles of Christ. Okay, all that wickedness wants to get into someplace pure and contaminate it. So the preachers need to preach hard and heavy on just the stuff the Bible condemns so that we keep the church house clean. Not that that's a guarantee, but I mean, at least they're trying. Romans chapter 1. Romans 1 verse 18. Romans 1:18. This is a heavy passage. Heavy. This, to me, in my mind, ranks up there with Matthew 23. Matthew 23 is where Jesus is letting the scribes, the rulers, and the Pharisees have it. And I mean, he's not sugarcoating anything. This is Paul kind of doing the same thing. Romans 1:18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness. You want a revelation from heaven? Wow. Here it is. It's against any ungodliness, unrighteousness of men, who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things which are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. That's what God did. God turned the lights out. He just darkened it. Now that was for a reason. So they'd wake up and say, hey, I can't see anything anymore. Somebody get the light out. It was not because he was mad at them. If he just wanted to destroy them, he could do that without thinking. I mean, he just snap his finger and they're gone. But he's doing this because he's merciful. Turning the light down low and making them stumble around should wake them up. You know, the first time you stub your toe, your brain starts working all of a sudden. Where did that come from? Get that light on. No more Legos in this house. You make some changes. That's what God's trying to get them to do. Now let's notice where it started. He says, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God. That's where all the trans mess is going. They don't want to glorify God as God. They want to say, I'll be God and recreate myself in the image I imagine. You can't do that. That is a open declaration against God's authority. How dare you make me this way? I'll remake myself. Tough stuff. That whole chapter is a tough one. I'm going to skip through it. The ancient Jewish and the mystics, the Kabbalah is what it's called. They teach that Adam was created in the image of God, a male-female hermaphrodite. Now, there is, if you get into Judaism, you know there's as many sects of Judaism as there is of what supposedly is Christianity. There are. This is a mystical sect, the Kabbalah of Judaism. And they teach that God created Adam, which was neither male nor female. That's just demonic is what that is. He made him a man. And so, you know what their God is. Their God is not Jehovah God. Their God is Baphomet, which is a male-female idol. And you find it in Freemasonry. That's where that comes out. Yeah. Genesis 6 we saw, you don't have to turn there. Genesis 6 we saw, we did a full length on Genesis 6 last time, so you know it. In Genesis 6 we saw that satanic mixing and stuff that shouldn't have gone on. Well, we saw another thing where he talked about men of renown in there. That was who this spirit realm was interested in. They're not interested in becoming human because they want to see what a human feels like. That's not really what's going on. What's really going on is they want worship. The thing that belongs to God. Worship belongs to God. It's His.
Amen.
And so they crave it. Matter of fact, any old stick that you'll carve and start bowing down to, they'll come hang out with that too so they can get your worship, so they can collect it. Daniel chapter 11.
It's like there's fungus.
That's it. Daniel 11:36. Daniel 11:36. And Biden shall do according to his will. The king shall do according to his will. And he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. God said, I wrote the book, and it will happen. Go ahead and make up your own mind what you're going to do, and we'll see how well it works out. Verse 37. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers. Okay, so when the Antichrist shows up, he's not going to produce a following that you understand. So you won't be able to say, oh, that's the ancient religion of so-and-so. He's going to give him a new one. So that he demands all the worship come to him. Because every religion, and I'm talking about false ones, has a hierarchy of worship. You worship this God, you worship that one, Muhammad, and then they've got all their little prophets and prophetesses, and all of them get, but that's not what he wants. He wants all of it. He wants it so bad that he says, make an image to me, and the people will worship that. He can't share his worship with anybody. You know, perfect imitation. God doesn't share his with anybody either. He says in verse 37, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women. So he's not normal. He ain't playing on the right team. Nor regard any God. So it won't be any fake religion either. It'll be a new one. And it's going to take hold of the world. For he shall magnify himself above all. He's going to say, all of your historic religions have been phony. They all gave you little glimpses of me, and I'm here now. Now let me tell you the real story. Come worship me, slap this number on your head, and go down to the grocery store, get anything you want. Of course, what we saw in Sodom, in our verse, was in Jude there, he said it started with fornication. That's where he opened the door, got a crack in the door right there. Look at 2 Chronicles 21. 2 Chronicles 21 verse 11. Pagan worship is all about beginning sin at any point they can. Because they know it won't stay there. It'll continue to grow. So here's what goes on in the pagan services. 2 Chronicles 21:11. Moreover, he made high places in the Mount of Judah, and caused the inhabitants of Jerusalem to commit fornication, and compelled Judah thereto. That's where it entered. And you know how all that goes. That's that pagan worship, even in Rome, 2,000 years after this, or 1,000 years after this. That's what the pagan worship was. They had temple prostitutes. I mean, that was the job. Why? Because God says don't do that. So they say, well, you'll do that. Because if you can break one rule of God, and how about the next one? That one wasn't so bad, was it? Let's break the next one. And then it's a perpetual list. And Satan gets in that way. Acts chapter 21. Acts 21, verse 25. This is the council at Jerusalem, and they're deciding. This whole thing, this is the transition book. Salvation has always been a Jewish thing. You know, Jesus shows up to the woman at the well, and he says, salvation's of the Jews. Well, that's what the thinking was. It was a Jewish thing. Now, all of a sudden, God switched things on them, and Gentiles are getting in. And so they had to scratch their heads and say, you know, what's the rules for a Gentile? How does this work? So they got together. Here it is, Acts 21, 25. As touching the Gentiles which believe, we have written and concluded that they observe no such thing, save only that they keep themselves from things offered to idols. That's that satanic worship. And from blood. What is blood? Blood is the cup of the devil. It goes on at a satanic ceremony. And it's going on right now in this earth. And from blood, and from strangled, and from, there it is, fornication. See, all those other things we could see was just real satanic. And guess what's connected to it? Fornication. God says, I know that's where they'll get the door cracked open. And then all that rest is easy to come in. Now he says there's something that I make a big deal about for me, just because it's my preference anyway. I don't think you ought to eat any food that's got blood in it. I think it ought to all be well done. And I think that I've got more grounds to preach that than anybody does to preach tithe for this age. For this age, here's the doctrine right here. He says, don't stay away from blood and things strangled, so the blood congeals in the muscle. Okay, well, I don't like anything that's bleeding anyway. I want it all well done, but people eat that stuff bloody. I don't think that's good for you. You know, the reason we die is we got bad blood. Really, it is. The problem is your blood, God sets it up so that it can heal itself. It has great properties in it that heal itself. But that only works so long, and then soon the blood quits working or it starts doing the opposite, destroying you. And so I don't want any blood from anything else. Yeah, I know. I got enough problem with blood right now. Look at Leviticus 20. Leviticus 20, verse 1. The thing that the cult, the people that like horror movies and they love to be scared, they're crazy.
Yeah, they are.
Why would you want to be scared? That's satanic. That's sadistic. That's just stupid. I'm sorry, that's just stupid. Okay. Well, you know what they like? They like vampire movies. That blood-sucking. Doesn't make any sense. Because there's a real deal of it going on. And what follows, of course, is cannibalism. And all of that is real stuff that's going to be real apparent in the tribulation. Now, it's going on right now in this earth, but we're not, the civilized world is not real aware of it. I mean, we know that it exists somewhere and all that kind of stuff, but you know, we're not. I hope we're not going to come across it in our regular life. But in the tribulation, they will. That's what will be going on. Leviticus 20, verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Again, thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, Whosoever he be of the children of Israel, or the stranger that sojourns in Israel, that giveth any of his seed to Moloch, he shall surely be put to death. That is, don't burn your babies to this false god. So America says, we'll make it legal. It's your body, it's your choice. It's neither. It's not your body, and it's not your choice. God made that thing grow in you, not you. God made your body. It don't belong to you either. Okay? To Moloch, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. And I will set my face against that man, and will cut him off from among his people, because he hath given his seed unto Moloch to defile my sanctuary and to profane my holy name. So we got some supposed preacher, not really a preacher, he's preaching something, but yeah, who says that he's pro-abortion. Can't be, and believe the Bible. I ain't no preacher. It says right here he's going to cut him off from his people. It says right here in the Old Testament, that guy has profaned God's holy name. And if the people of the land do any wise hide their eyes from the man when he giveth his seed to Moloch and kill him not, then I will set my face against that man. God's serious about it. He's like, you can't even just claim that you had ignorance. You didn't know he was doing that. I know what you knew, what you suspected. Okay, we got a nation that's gone crazy with the abortion, and we all know about it, and America's going to have to pay for it. I hope it's not in my time. I don't claim that America is going to have, pre-tribulation pangs that the church goes through. I hope not. We might, but I hope not. It's looking that way, but we don't have to. God could take us out. We're the bride of Christ. He don't want his bride getting beat up before he takes her home. But that's up to us. He says right there that he punishes for this kind of mess. America is going to pay for it. Problem is, I don't know when.
I think it's already begun.
Yeah, you can see it. Yep. I hope the bad stuff doesn't hit till I'm gone, because I'm a sissy. But it might.
Well, I kind of take comfort in Miss Joy's testimony about that storm. Her and her other family member both got to their destination before the storm hit.
Mm-hmm.
She pulled out and got here, and they went actually in the direction of and got to their house before it hit.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty interesting, God-fearing person, and God said, well, it's time for you guys to leave now.
Yeah. Yep. Here's the question. Psalm 14, verse 4. Psalm 14, verse 4. First thing we'll do is we'll look at the spiritual application, which is not the order you should do this in. When you read the Bible, you should first of all find the doctrinal application. You should say, okay, what does it mean right there on the page in black and white, the way it was written? Find that. And then shortly after that, find the spiritual, because that'll lead to a personal application. So here, let's take the spiritual. Chapter 14, verse 4. Have all the workers of iniquity no knowledge? Yeah, they're stupid. Who eat up my people as they eat bread, and call not upon the Lord? Spiritual application is that's what's happening in America. The workers of iniquity, you know that party. They're eating up the righteous like bread. They're going to outlaw as many religious things as they can and get away with. And they're going to reverse all of anything that was a godly rule that translated into American law, they're going to get rid of if they can. And he says they eat them up as bread. And that's what it feels like is going on right now. Now, that's a spiritual application. That's not the literal. The literal is literal. So what's it mean literally? Have not the workers of iniquity no knowledge. Okay, that's going to be tribulation. And they will actually be workers of iniquity from the pit of hell. What do? Eat up my people as they eat bread. Cannibalism. Literally. And it's going to happen. Look at chapter 16.
It's already happening to
Mm-hmm.
the guy arrested I read today, killed his father, and his father's other granddaughter, and he killed his wife, and he took her heart out and cooked it with potatoes and ate it.
Oof.
And he just got released from jail because of COVID.
Right. That's the stupidest thing.
That is the one person.
Yeah.
release.
Really. Psalm 16 verse 4. Their sorrows shall be multiplied that hasten after another God. Now we have to take that in the spiritual application, and you have to make personal application. And you really have to want to see it to understand it in this age. But in the tribulation, you will understand it. It'll be literal. And you'll be seeing it fulfill immediate. Their drink offerings of blood will I not offer, nor take up their names into my lips. That's what's going to go on. It's happened in the past. That was what was going on in his day. And it's a prophecy about what's going to happen in the tribulation. Psalm 79. Psalm 79 verse 1. O God, the heathen are come unto thine inheritance. Thy holy temple have they defiled. That's exactly what's going to happen in the tribulation. They have laid Jerusalem on heaps. The dead bodies of thy servants have they given to be meat unto the fowls of the heaven, and the flesh of thy saints unto the beasts of the earth. Their blood have they shed like water round about Jerusalem, and there was none to bury them. We are become a reproach to our neighbors, a scorn and derision to them that are round about us. How long, Lord, wilt thou be angry forever? Shalt thy jealousy burn like fire? That's what they're going to be saying in the tribulation, because that's exactly what's going to happen. Now, Israel has always been in this position because they forsook God. And so God's turned them over to one nation after the other that's just beat them to a bloody pulp. Hitler had him a heyday with them. And I'm sure any individual Jew that truly wanted to seek God in that, God would give him a revelation. Because his whole point in punishment is to get them to turn to him. Okay? And until we start feeling pain, we don't usually do anything, make any change. And the more hard-headed you are, the more pain you can take. Jeremiah 32. I got so many verses here we could go forever. I really can't finish this point. Yeah, we better stop. We've already been an hour. Well, let's finish this one verse and then we'll be done. Jeremiah 32:35. Jeremiah 32:35. And they built the high places of Baal, which are in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to cause their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire unto Moloch, which I commanded them not, neither came it into my mind that they should do this abomination to cause Judah to sin. That's a strange verse. God's saying that's something I never thought of. Well, think about that one. He said, you come up with a sin I hadn't even contemplated. Wow. Well, no wonder he's punishing them hard and heavy. And going to. All right, we'll finish that point up over the next 4 or 5 weeks. I don't know how long it's going to take.